Has we've arrived at episode 5. How you feeling, my man?
I'm feeling good, mate. I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. It's been just over a week since we last spoke. How has that week gone for you, mate? Tell me about it.
It's been a good week. I talk a little bit more about it in Reasons to be Cheerful, but it was my youngest daughter's birthday on Monday. She turned 6, which is incredible to think that I'm a parent of a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 6-year-old. But there we go. It was a nice day.
And you had the day off with them, didn't you, on Friday?
Oh, Monday.
On Monday, yeah.
Yeah. Did I say
it go?
Friday?
No, I just said Friday.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't know what day it is, mate.
Maybe I just felt like I had a day off on Friday. I was working.
Yeah, we got a day off this Friday.
Happy days.
Are you having it off?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to take Friday off. Yeah.
Yeah, shut the laptop. Don't open it.
No, I'm not going to.
I don't believe you. But other than that, you've had a good week.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, it's been lots going on, lots of stuff, exciting stuff, as well as just, usual keeping business going and doing schooling and all that business.
Yeah, schooling's back, right? Homeschooling is back. I've had like a bit of a up and down week. Like, okay. I think you spoke about it a little bit last week where you said you like bit up and down. You did that lovely piece on like, trying to remain consistent through it. And I've felt it a little bit. I felt a little bit turbulent is the word springing to mind. Nothing worrying, but I prior to that, I'd had a couple of really, really good weeks where I was just flying and I felt emotionally heavy a little bit a couple of days and felt a little bit like, I just want this over now. I want the lockdown over. And I think that's because we're starting to get towards some kind of restrictions being lifted. They're on about lifting them this week, aren't they?
I think there's supposed to be something happening tomorrow, but there's a lot of speculation. I mean,
Oh, tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Thursday was the day that they were going to announce something, but I don't know
if
I'm just recalling that from someone.
Yeah. I heard Thursday, and I thought they might do something Thursday because obviously Friday's like a big day with the celebrations and stuff like that. So it might make sense. But I just read before we come on that they're like 2 weeks into training football in Germany. Have you seen this?
I saw, yeah.
And 10 players have already tested positive for corona.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So like you see that and you think, I can't see football restarting. I don't know how they'll carry on and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So there's going to be there's a lot of like staggered stuff to come, I reckon.
Yeah, I think everyone's just waiting to see what happens, and I mean, my intuition is that life as normal, we're not going to see it until probably towards the back end of the year. So it's going to be very staggered and stuff like that. But, even if it means we can get together with small groups, say family or people that we care about, if people can start to go back to work a little bit, that, if they've been locked down, if they've been on furlough, if they've, those things are really important. So if we can start to see a bit of that easing, then I think that will make a huge difference.
Yeah, it is. It's our close family that I actually felt a little bit heavy about. So my father-in-law, who are like really close with, and my, Leah's, my wife's mum and dad, my kids are really, really close with them, and they dropped something over, and my 3-year-old daughter saw her granddad, and she didn't do like the crying that she does where a 3-year-old cries because she knows she's going to get what she wants. Her little eyes went red, and I was like, "You all right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And you could see it was just genuine release of emotion that she misses her nan and granddad. And of course, being like I am, I get a bit like, I just want it to end now. I just want to. So I'm hoping that more than anything that we get to see at least some of our closest friends and family. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that'd be huge for a lot of people. And then also on top of that, I think what hit me quite heavily this week is that we were supposed to fly out on holiday Monday. So I should be on a beach in Mallorca at the moment.
Well, yeah, I can understand. That's pretty tough, man. I mean, maybe you could turn your garden into a bit of a beach setting for the bank holiday weekend.
That's not
get your little paddle pool out and get your mocktail.
The weather's mocktail. The weather's supposed to be nice actually this weekend.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit. I only just started talking about my holiday because at the beginning there's this whole thing, isn't there, where we're not. I think it's a slight sign of like emotional immaturity in us as people, where it's like you're not allowed to talk about your personal struggles when there's bigger struggles going on. But people forget that there's always somebody worse off than you, right? So actually the idea that there's worse things to think about at the moment is not something that's restricted to what we're experiencing now. That's going on all of the time. So you can recognize that there's worse things to worry about and people have it harder than you at the moment, and you're allowed to struggle with your own stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, right? We've talked about the fact that we're very fortunate in many respects, with having a bit of outdoor space and that sort of stuff. And we've talked about the impact of people that don't have that. We also talked about, Sam Smith and his relative, mental health versus people who are struggling, and or Captain Tom Moore. It is relative, isn't it? Really, like you're right. Everyone, we can empathize with people, and it can also be tough, and if you have to suppress your feelings because you feel like you don't want to be lacking, if you don't want to feel like you're lacking compassion, then you're not your true authentic self. So I think it's important to be able to have the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to be able to feel a range of emotions and know, that that's okay too. Which kind of, the idea of authenticity brings us quite nicely to the fact that we are on episode 5, which, although it's only episode 5, feels like a little bit of a landmark. Can I call it a landmark? Episode 5?
I think so. 5 is halfway to 10. 10's, we're serious podcasters. So I think we're halfway to being serious podcasters, mate.
Yeah. So your maths that you're doing there, your maths shows that we're serious podcasters because 5's half of 10.
Yeah. Look at that, man. Proper scientific analysis.
Okay. So while we're here, I think it's worth doing a bit of reflection on the podcast and where we're at with it. So I'll put a question to you. Because firstly, to let everyone know, to let the people that are listening know that we've been kind of experimenting, right? We've wanted this to be like a topical show where we tackle difficult conversations, sometimes in a light-hearted way, but we bring our authentic self to every conversation that we're having, right? So, we've tried to steer clear of too much of a framework to do it in, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So based on the 4 episodes that we've done and the 15 minutes that we've done here, what things stand out as really working for you as being a positive thing? And then as well, what things do you think haven't really worked, or things that you've come away from an episode and thought to yourself, no, I'm not digging that?
I think what's working is we believed that we could probably quite easily transition from having conversations between us two and then recording it and then putting it out. So that's been quite good. So I think just our approach is just to keep it conversational and relevant, and and not to overly engineer it, which is why we've decided not to talk to each other before we record, and we just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And what I like about that is sometimes it's more organic, and there's going to be ums and ahs, and while we're thinking about stuff, because it's genuinely we're thinking in the moment. So I think that's quite good. Feedback that I've had is that it just feels authentic, that it's not got this crazy sense of veneer across it that a lot of very polished podcasts have, and they're all really good, but they're just a different kind of tone. What hasn't worked, I think it was just like the first episode where like
you had your mic miles away from your mouth.
Mic was miles away, and the printer and all that sort of stuff, and not really knowing how to deal with it, and maybe being overly concerned about all that stuff, and just so that was it really. But look, mate, like you say, this is only number 5, so the learnings will come down the line.
What about you? I feel much more looser now. I feel much more loose and like free when we do a podcast now. Whereas at that beginning, it was like, it felt like we were on like live TV when we first done it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the positives, like the feedback that we got last week, I got some really nice feedback from different people last week, and feedback from people that I'm not like really close to, if you know what I mean. So that kind of harbors a little bit more like meaning, doesn't it? When somebody's taken, time to reach out and do it, who's not like a close friend who knows you want their feedback, if that makes sense. And the way that we tackled so the feedback that we got of the way that we tackled that conversation last week was I liked that. I like that we are in the moment. I like that we try and be as authentic as we can, right? And we just tackle those difficult conversations and put them out there. Because actually, while I'm talking, I had a bit of fear about last week's episode, putting it out, right? And I thought about it more than I would probably think about other pieces of content that I put out. But I'm glad that we did just put it out in the way that we did. So I think that's good. And I want to keep tackling the difficult conversations. It's a real passion of mine. I like doing that. What do I think hasn't worked? That first episode, when but even that's a good sign, right? When I look back at the first episode, I did, I recognized how stiff and worried and concerned we were about how it was going to come across and stuff like that. And I think that came across when we was doing it.
Yeah.
And I guess, what else I do like is what we're looking at. The idea of now starting to engage a little bit more with the people that are interacting with the podcast as a piece of content. So
yeah, and actually, just I think the thing about the first episode was actually, despite all of those things, there were some really good topics, and we covered some really important stuff that I think landed well. But yeah, just in terms of people listening, someone who's a friend in my network, and someone that I whose opinion I value a lot. She's a listener as well and enjoying it, but she had a great idea where we get questions from people that are listening, and she had a couple of questions that to pose to us to kind of have a reflect on an answer. So I might just bring those up. So that's from Liz, my mate Liz, and
hello Liz.
Hello, Liz. Who feels very radio show, doesn't it?
The 3 at 3 with Liz.
She's given a few, but I'm just gonna pick. I'm gonna pick one.
If it's good, we'll do more than one.
All right. Well, we'll go with the first one.
Liz has made an effort here.
All right. We'll do two. Okay. So Josh and Hass, what is the most surprising thing about your friendship, given the 115 miles difference in the early stages of our lives? It's a great question. What's the most surprising?
What's the most surprising? I would say what's the most surprising is just how very similar we are in values. I say that's the most surprising, but I don't know, it's hard because now I know you, so it doesn't feel surprising. But I think if you would have taken us as people before we met, I'm not sure you would have placed us as being as good of friends as we are. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you would have done that, because I think you would have thought that we would have had a lot more difference maybe in value. So I maybe that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of two things that I find surprising. One, which is there's a bit of an age gap. I think there's probably about 9 years between us.
Yeah, you're right? Old, didn't you?
Yeah.
You are old.
Or you're just a baby. But actually, we have a lot of cultural similarities in terms of like music and stuff like that. And so I find that quite interesting that we both go back to like certain garage tunes of the early 2000s and stuff like that. I thought that's quite funny. But interesting.
I always wanted to be older, by the way, when I was younger. And like I would go as far as to say, I used to do, there's a nightclub in Swindon that when I was younger was called The Furnace, right?
Yeah.
But
and you wanted to light up the furnace, didn't you? With your dance moves.
Before it was called The Furnace, it was called Level 3, right? But I think it's since then changed back to that name again. But Level 3, it was called Level 3 before my time. I never ever knew it as Level 3. But when I used to talk about it to people, I would call it Level 3 and then correct myself to Furnace because I thought it made me seem older. I used to do a lot of stuff like that, mate. A lot
Well,
of stuff, like call a Snickers a marathon. Snickers was never a marathon in my time.
During your time. But
Well,
I reckon you probably
young.
pick that up from people you used to be around, right? And so you just
Well,
wanted
yeah,
to
but I used
emulate.
to do it on purpose because I wanted to seem older than what I was. Whereas
Yeah.
now I'd love to feel younger.
Yeah, man. Anyway, you interrupted my flow there.
Sorry, mate.
No, it's right. I'm just joking. No, the other thing that I find really surprising is, the nature of our relationship was that I was brought in to meet you as a potential mentor, right? But actually, what I find really surprising is, despite the age gap, despite the fact that we've had different journeys, that there are moments where I give some support and advice because of some experience that I've had, but then equally, and this really, it's a really powerful and pleasant surprise, is that sometimes you just coach me and you mentor me and you kind of show wisdom. So it's a very dynamic and two-way relationship that I think is really surprising.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was equal. I think you're probably there a little bit more for me in terms of experience, particularly work-wise. But it's funny you say that because you think back to when I did my first ever coactive training and I had to do like a half an hour coaching session with you. And I remember ringing you up and being like, trying all these coaching techniques on you and just feeling like an absolute moron when I was doing it.
You were like going, how can Luke take on Yoda? This is crazy.
Yeah, but it's even then I never would have thought that I would go on to basically, help you through life in the way that I did.
Yeah, you just guide me. You're my Sherpa. You're my light. No, but I think it's equal. It's just we sort of pull on different things, from each other. Brilliant. I like that. Great question, Liz. Okay, let's do another one. I think it's a good idea.
I like these. Thank you, Liz.
Deserted on an island. Your one luxury item would be, and now you have to answer for me.
Yeah.
And then I have to answer for you.
Okay. So while I'm busy thinking what I would take, there's an answer that comes straight in my head for you.
Yeah.
There is. And you just tell me if I get this right.
Okay.
So you're one item. You're on a desert island and you're only allowed to take one item. I'm a stickler for rules, Has.
Yeah, one item, and let's just make it easy, like, because you want to feel good, and like you want the listeners to think that you would think about your family and kids and all that stuff first. But let's just assume that it has to be an innate object, right? It's not family, it's not loved ones. Like,
all right, mate. I'm not going to do what I did last week and just go.
I'm just letting you know.
Kids.
I'm just letting you know.
I'd take my kids. Trust
Okay.
me. If I had the opportunity to go to a desert island, I wouldn't be taking my 6 kids.
you'd be sending them a message in a bottle.
Yeah. Mine's a postcard, so I can write to my kids. And no. Right. So what I reckon you would take is a wok.
Okay.
What's that funny?
I don't own a wok.
Yeah, but listen, hear me out.
Okay. It's versatile.
Yeah. I know you like to cook, yeah?
I do.
And a wok is multi-purpose, isn't it? Like you can use a wok to like boil stuff in and then fry stuff in.
Do you know what?
So like you might not own a wok now, but that's because you've got something for everything. But a wok would then you'd be able to cook all the things that you wanted to cook on the desert island.
I think it's a brilliant idea. It makes a lot of sense. Sticking on the food theme, I reckon you'd want a fridge.
Well, I would take a fridge.
Yeah, you'd want a fridge, just because you love food, and you're quite lazy at times as well, I imagine. So you're not going to want to be hunting and foraging on a daily basis. So you want something that keeps your food fresh and keeps your beverages cool.
My mocktail.
Your mocktail.
I would like a fridge. I would take a fridge. What? So, do you have an answer of what you would actually take?
Right.
I think a wok's a good answer.
All right. Take yours. Take a wok yourself.
For you, I mean.
All right. It's good. Yeah, it's good. I think okay,
You'd take
right.
your laptop so you can still work.
No, yeah, the sensible answer would be something like a Swiss Army knife, because that just
Yeah, no
sorts you
one
out.
wants
But
the
it's
boring,
practical, right?
sensible
No one
answer,
wants that.
mate.
Yeah. I would say that I would like a Kindle.
Oh, that's such a wet answer.
Why is that a wet answer?
What, a Kindle?
You have the world's library at your fingertips. You'll be forever entertained
Oh, you've just
through the
said that because
power
you
of
want to sound
words.
sophisticated.
No, it's true.
No.
A Kindle, like, you don't want one book, because a book will be done, right? For me, like, I don't know, like an
Yeah.
hour, because I read so quickly. But like a Kindle, just, books forever, man. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. If we were on the same island, we would need more than one plug socket then, because I'd need one for my fridge.
Forget about all that rubbish. No, we're not going to be on the same island. We're on a separate island. You're by yourself. So if you're not going to have a fridge, what would you have?
Well, I do listen. I like the Kindle idea.
It's mine, so get your own.
A football.
Ah, okay.
I'd take a football.
Have you watched what's that Tom
Castaway.
Hanks movie? Yeah.
Wait, is it the beard that's making you ask that?
Well, yeah, it's the beard. Also, it's the ball.
Yeah. What's he called? What's the ball called in it?
Can't remember. It's been a long time.
It's been a good film, though, mate. Good film. How many questions did Liz give you?
Liz gave me 3 questions.
Come on, let's do the third then, mate. I like this, and then we'll discuss how we want people to give us more questions.
It's a big one. Okay. If we consider COVID to be a global problem, what is the single biggest global solution to ensure that history isn't repeated? Go on, Josh. You're first.
I'm going to wax lyrical about this. Emotional intelligence is something that we need to take from this. So we need to become much better at acknowledging and accepting what's happening and the way that we feel about it. Because at the beginning of this, I did the whole big, like, I dug out Boris Johnson for still shaking hands and all of that stuff. I'll stand by digging him out because he's the Prime Minister and he shouldn't have been doing that. But I do think we all did this. I remember having conversations when what was happening in Italy was happening in Italy. But like our holiday, for example, probably right up until the moment we locked down, and I was talking to my wife, I was saying, we're going on the 4th of May. There's no way that they're going to stop flights and shut the country down for that. It just won't happen. So, when the reality is when you look back, that was such a ridiculous thought and idea. If you even took 5 minutes to think this through properly. So I do think there's a lot to be said for, if we particularly, I know she said globally, but particularly from a Western world, particularly a British standpoint, we need to, understand that stiff upper lip, that mentality that got us through some of the wars and stuff like that. It doesn't get you through everything. You can't just sort of like Great Britain your way through a virus that doesn't care who you are or how Great Britain you are. Am I making sense with what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be learned from that, and just being a little bit more open and willing to look at things as they really are.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can live your life, by the way, like worried about a pandemic that potentially is probably only going to happen every 100 years. We've got to be careful that we don't take the fear of this. And then I know that's a bit silly to make that guess, but we've got to be a little bit careful that we don't live in fear of this happening all of our lives. We've got to try and get back to some reality.
It's not that it's silly. I think you probably just saw my eyes go like that. It's less about what you just said and more about we don't know. Like, we don't know that this isn't going to happen more and more. I think obviously what is likely to happen after this is like travel's going to be impacted. People going to different countries, free movement is going to be kind of probably more restricted for a long time. So that's going to have an impact. In terms of how do we stop history repeating itself? Well, it depends on the question. Are we talking about a global pandemic repeating itself? No, it can't be done because it's sort of, this sort of stuff has happened before. It will happen again. It's sort of, unless we sort of completely restrict travel entirely and stop people moving around, which you can't do, there's always going to be, the threat or the possibility of that happening. I think what it's really important is to, alongside what you're saying around EQ, I think it's also making sure that we put things in place so that we don't forget what uh, uh, what we're going through, what we're feeling, the impact of the losses, the fact that actually you've said it before, and I agree with you that you've got to hold government to account, and when you stop holding government to account and start kind of leaning into rhetoric that they want you to lean into, which is all around kind of should we come out of Europe or not come out of Europe for us, right? That's all the entire conversation was about. We weren't really looking at what was going on in the NHS, and then until you need it in the way that we did. And so I think we've got to make sure that we don't forget. And the way that you don't forget is to make sure that you carry through the conversations and you don't get tired of it. The problem with, say, campaigns for elections is when you get people like when you mobilize the young people around kind of getting a new leader elected, to then get them to carry through to a general election is really tricky. That's why Corbyn struggled. He had that kind of uplift and he had this grassroots movements, but it didn't kind of carry through. And so it's about making sure that energy that we've got now carries through to the kind of beyond whatever we go to. But then as well as that, you need to drive systemic change. We've talked about systemic change. It's not just about having a conversation. Conversations kind of swirl up and there's a lot of momentum around a particular time, but unless you're driving systemic change, it will just go away again because you'll go somewhere else. And then the other force that kind of we've got to compete with is you've got a lot of businesses who are getting ready because they've been struggling, like retailers and kind of brands and manufacturers and restaurants and all that sort of stuff. Understandably, they're getting ready for as soon as we can start to ease off lockdown, they're going to be driving people to be spending, and they're going to be driving people towards, going to that place of, hey, it used to be much better, let's go back to that place. And so people we've talked about, will probably want to rush towards feeling a sense of, back to how it used to be. And so if we're not careful, people will forget. And so we really can't let people forget.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And it highlights the need for those difficult conversations. That's what, I'm really big on that. I don't like the term, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it. And we've got to be really careful, actually, in the way that we talk about things like kindness, for example, that we don't make kindness the avoidance of having any of those tricky disagreements in the way that we see things. Because I think that's really, really important. And you've seen that kind of playing out a little bit where people are saying, if you haven't got anything nice to say about it, then don't say anything. Or, the government are doing their best, so just leave them. I think we should leave them to it and let them do their best, right? And that's kind of dangerous territory, actually, when you get into the idea that you should, the one people that you should absolutely be holding to account is the people who are serving us. Because I think people really forget that the government work for us, right? People forget that we elect them to work for us, to do our will, as a democratic society. So, I do hope, like you say, that we can learn from this and start to have those more tricky conversations. And that is really about challenging yourself, and making sure, bring back sort of healthy debate. Because you look at like things like Question Time. Do you ever watch Question Time?
Yeah.
It's on a bit late for me, right? So I have to watch it on catch up. But that ends up getting polarized, You end up just getting polarized. And rather than trying to listen to each other, it's all about trying to make each other right, and trying to really dig each other out. So I hope we can make headway in that. And I do think you're seeing that happen. People that wouldn't normally talk. I mean, politics is being talked about more than ever right now, right? So that's a positive thing, as exhausting as it can feel.
What do you think needs to change? Because what do you think needs to change about politics? Because it's always been that way, right? There's always been warring factions. There's been 2 or 3 parties, usually 2, and they dance between handing power over to each other. But broadly, they sort of say the same thing and they keep the same stuff in place. And, so what needs to change? I don't want to make this a big debate about politics. I'm just like, what's the one thing that needs to be different coming out of this to drive a more accountable kind of type of politics and government?
Okay, so as soon as you've added that to make it more accountable, it kind of gives a different strand to it. The one thing that I think we all, as people, let me concentrate on people just for a moment. What I think we need to do to for a better, for politics to be better in our country, we have to get back to listening. And I'm talking about myself here. Like I'm not like saying you're all rubbish at listening. I know as somebody who, we've talked about this, can fall over to being a little bit too hard left and all that sometimes. You forget to listen. You forget to understand that we often want the same things from opposing sides, but we have different methodology and beliefs of how we get there. So as people, we have to get better at listening. The left have to listen more to the right, and the right have to listen more to the left, right? And I really believe that needs to happen. And then from into government, and look, you need hours to unpack this, so I just want to be a little bit careful about what I'm saying. But the one thing that Jeremy Corbyn gave, right, and to counter that and to give some more context, the reason that I think Donald Trump, for example, got elected when he did, is because they both, from different sides, I believe, and people will argue this, but they both, to me, come across as actually what they're saying they truly believe, right? So Donald Trump, I disagree with nearly everything he says, right? But I do think at least he's being who he really is in that moment, right? And there's complexities to that, but I'd like to see more of an approach where people can be more honest. You never see somebody from the left say about a policy from the right, like, actually, no, I agree with that one. You've nailed that one. I think I wouldn't change much about what you're doing with that. But then that opens the conversation about accountability, where you do need to make sure that you're always questioning what they're doing. Have I made sense, or I rambled there?
You didn't ramble. I think the one thing we don't know is you're making an assumption. I think it's not the first time you made it on this podcast that what you see with Donald Trump is what you get. I actually think he's probably, I probably don't. I think he's not as smart as he thinks he is, and he probably does feel it. But there is a lot of kind of strategy to his menace, I would say. With them both, what I think is their downfall, so just to play out the other side, is that they're inflexible. Yeah. So they might believe what they believe, but their lack of flexibility makes them somebody that you can't really connect to on a long term. Now, the thing that people are connecting with Trump is he's playing on fears and stoking fears, and
and don't get me wrong, I think the bloke's absolutely full of shit, right? Yeah, but I think he believes that most of the time, right? But I get what you're saying. But if you're going to stay true to what you believe, then I guess in a way you'll become too rigid, right?
No, I disagree. I think you can believe what you believe. I believe what I believe, but I'm also willing to concede to a stronger argument. And actually, it's the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A growth mindset means you're willing to be shifted. You're willing to take counsel. You're willing to understand a different person's perspective and then make a call. Jeremy Corbyn, in my personal opinion, has a very fixed mindset about certain things. Now, some people can argue that that's ideology, and ideology is so strong in his makeup that he's unshakable. And I understand that perspective. I think when you come to a place where you want to lead a country, you have to understand that not everyone shares your ideologies, and you are governing across a whole nation, not just the people that support you. So you have to take a more flexible approach. It's incumbent upon you, if you want to lead the country, to be able to be flexible. And you're going to get a lot of grief. Yeah, you're just going to get a lot of grief from people who think you should be hard left. right? And that is a difficult place to be. But
and he got some stick when he maneuvered a little bit, right? When he, on his plan on one of his manifestos, he said that we'll put it out to the public, and if they still want to leave, then we'll set about a plan to leave. And everyone was like, well, you said that you would remain, and all that stuff. So there's something to be said for people as well, because I'm just, you talked about Liverpool a couple of episodes back when you said that they changed their stance on something. And a lot of people give them stick for that. And that's something as people we're not very good at. We want politicians to listen to us, but then when they change their stance, we're like, wow, well, you've changed your stance, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but we want them to do that. We want them to change their stance based on what we said. Then you start getting into the murky area of people being a little bit slippery, and then just setting things up and saying what they think people want to hear and all that stuff. So no, I agree with what you're saying. And like I say, I think it's a massive, such a deep and complex one that's littered in so many different complexities. And I don't even remember, did we get on this from Liz's question?
I don't know. We just
you got on your political soapbox.
But I think we did this particular bit justice, which is just what needs to change is I think a willingness to listen is what you said, and I think that's basically what we're just basically stretching that out a little bit. It's a willingness to listen, and the willingness to listen is the willingness to kind of concede and do things differently.
And also it takes a certain part of it, because let me just unpack a little bit of what I was feeling when you were talking, right? There's a bit of me when you were saying what you were saying where I'm like, oh, he's making you wrong on a couple of things. And my natural reaction is to be like, well, hang on a minute, and defend what I'm saying. But my inner workings of my mind have to go, don't get defensive, listen. And then I listen and I'm like, yeah, I agree with everything that he's saying, right? So do I then make myself wrong on what I was saying? Actually, no, let's just challenge and be in the moment and think about what we're saying, right? And have that proper dialogue. And I think that's really important. And it's actually, that's a skill that's, not always easy to master. It's very easy.
Let me ask you something. Was that inner dialogue going only because we're recording our conversation and we're going to put it out as a podcast, or is it because and therefore how you want to be perceived or not, or is it just that's how you always are with
no people? If it was me and you, that wouldn't gone on in my head, but that's because it's a public conversation and I know people are going to be listening. So there's another layer to that as well, right?
Interesting. I look at us as just finding the right, like we said before, we sort of enter a conversation with a perspective, and then there'll be another one, and then we sort of find the right kind of medium in the middle.
We just hit topics with a curiosity. That's what that's what I really, really like. We're curious, right? We just dive into stuff, try and unpack it and see where it goes. So I think that's, I think that leads us nicely on to, something that we've discussed about this. And I like the idea of the questions coming in and engaging with our audience. And we've discussed the idea of having people come on, right? Come on the show with us, right? And talk. And you mentioned about how we'd like to have people come on as co-hosts rather than as guests. So tell me exactly what you mean by that as well.
Yeah, so I think just to continue the vein of a conversation versus an interview, right? So the idea being that you and I have topical conversations so that anyone that comes in, instead of us interviewing them and trying to find out specifically like what they do in the world, what they're up to, it's about them joining our conversation at the level at which we have it and just join us and kind of bring in their perspective. So it's a different kind of approach to kind of the interview format. So that's kind of an exciting development that I think we'll, when we can bring that in, it'll be good for the show.
Yeah. It'll be good because it will bring another layer of context to every conversation that we have, right? Which is what we want. We want it to be, and I like that idea, not just getting someone on and being like, tell us all about you. Let's make the focus about them. We'll do a quick intro at the beginning and then we'll ask them what they think about racial bias or whatever it is that
that's our topic of the day, isn't it?
Whatever our topic is that we've managed to dive into.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit of time. So I want to ask you, are you doing anything Friday? For VE Day?
I didn't even know it was VE Day. I just thought it was a bank holiday.
Okay, so let me tell you, it's 75 years, right? that's why it's the celebration 75 years since World War II, with what happened in Europe and the invasions with Nazi Germany and all that sort of began to
I know what happened
subside.
in World War II. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for the history lesson.
I Googled it before we started the thingy because I didn't really know what it was.
Okay.
But so there's a lot of Great Britain flags about, at the moment. I want to ask you something, and we've got time to do this. We've got 15, 20 minutes, haven't we, if we need it, right?
Okay, yeah.
Big question. When you see the Great Britain flag, what does it mean to you? What do you think of? What does it conjure up in you?
I feel connected to it.
You feel connected to it?
Yeah. But it's all context, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, So if I watch the Olympics and one of the athletes, one of the rowers wins and has it draped on their shoulders, I feel connected. If I see it in celebratory mode, I feel connected. If I see it on a march by EDL, I feel disconnected to it, right? If I see it in a particular context, I will be disconnected to it. So it really does matter on the context of which I see it.
Yeah, because I think probably more than the Great Britain flag, which, by the way, I think the Great Britain flag has had a bit of a demise in recent times. I don't think you see it used in any way that we used to. Would you agree with that? If you go back to, like, say, the early 90s, when England football fans, for example, went abroad, they would take the Great Britain flag and it was all about Great Britain. Whereas now I think that St. George's flag is used a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
What do you feel when do you have a difference of feeling when you see the St. George flag?
I do. Yeah, I do. I feel like, for me, okay, let me just go back a minute. My parents were immigrants into the country. So, I was born in England, but I feel British, not English. And that's mainly because my lineage doesn't extend into this country. My parents came into this country in the late 60s for my dad and early 70s for my mum, right? So, but I feel British because I was born here, I have a British passport, my roots are here, but I don't feel English, okay? So that's kind of the context for me. The irony is that, when it comes to, like, sport, I support the country I was born in and live in, right? But when I see the flag, unfortunately, the way that I've seen the flag abused by certain factions, it just conjures an uncomfortable feeling of nationalism, and not a good nationalism. Like, I think there's good nationalism and bad nationalism, right? Good nationalism is pride, and and I can respect that for people that really, that feel that. Bad nationalism is using nationalism to divide, to create fear, to stoke hate, and be violent. And unfortunately, a lot of the significance of the flag connects me to that bad place because of what's happened. And so when I drive around sometimes and I see a massive flagpole with St. George's, I immediately make assumptions about who lives in that house. And I don't think that's maybe fair, but it's just such a bold statement, and that's where it takes me, and that's just my honest answer.
I mean, there's quite so the reason I ask is because, like, down the street and stuff, they've all started putting out Great Britain flags because of what it is on Friday. And I have the St. George flag tattooed on my arm, right? And when I had it tattooed on my arm, I had it tattooed on my arm from the context of what you've just spoken about, right? Which makes me feel uncomfortable. And I just, something that I've been thinking about when I saw the Great Britain flag, particularly the St. George flag, okay? I think it's been overly hijacked by the far right, and if my country did something that make me be proud, like it does at the moment, the NHS, for example, should make me proud to be part of that. I wouldn't want to hang a St. George flag out my window because I would feel like it would make you feel like you feel when you drive past one and see it out of the window, right? So I just sort of, it got me thinking, and it started to, you know, when I saw the sense, so my street's doing a social distance on your front garden street party on Friday, because it's a bank holiday. It's going to be lovely weather. Someone's gone through and put letters all through the door to do it, and the whole street's going to do it. And it was just the guy opposite me. He was like, I've got a bulldog as well. And he was like, we should get a Union Jack and put it on that. I want a picture taken with it. And my initial reaction was to feel a bit defensive. And I was like, I wanted to be a little bit like, no, that's not what it's about. I'm not one of them people. And I just started wondered if, you know, maybe this is an opportunity for us to take back the flags, particularly the Union Jack. I don't know if I've got it in me to take back the St. George. Genuinely, I think it's been hijacked that badly. But the Union Jack, I just wonder if, I mean, there's the idea of globalization, which is another layer of it. We're one world. Do we really need our patriotism for our countries? There's a conversation that probably haven't got time to have today. In simple terms, I would say, no, I think it's good to have your own culture and to be proud of your own culture. It's just making sure that we can do that in a way that's not minimum, at least not abrasive even, which it can sometimes feel like, particularly when we as English people do it. So to get to what I'm trying to say, I just wonder if, you know, now is a really good opportunity to bring that Great Britain flag back as something to feel really, really proud of, and what we've achieved as people. I don't know if there's something in that, but it's something that I've been
So the
thinking
thing to think about is, I think the flag is an embodiment of what might be considered Britishness, right? So rather than claim back the flag, which just, you know, for me, I think it's about celebrating what makes us British, and that is more than just a flag, right? And the flag is a single embodiment of it, and it's an important one. But the Union Jack, it's funny actually, because I really do go to very different places with it. You know, there was definitely a while where the Union Jack represented what probably the St. George's, you know, represents now. Like, but I also go to a place of, you know, Jerry Halliwell wearing it as a dress for Spice Girls, and
I
like
bet you
Oasis,
do, Has,
and
I bet you do,
you know, and but you know, so and the Olympics, you know, 2012 was when my son was born, and I just remember actually it was during the Paralympics, and the pride that I felt, you know, you know, for all of our athletes from all the, you know, all of the nations within it. So I think it's important to celebrate what makes us brilliant, and I don't want to sound too like twee or too like you know, overly optimistic, but I think there's a lot that binds us, and a flag is just a part of an expression of that. So
an expression of that.
I think it'll be lovely to see that on Friday if people have got their flags out. And you know what, you should just listen to your intuition. If you want to have a fun photo with the Union Jack around your dog, then that's cool. Like, we can't be afraid to do all that stuff. So
No.
I think it'll be nice to see people celebrating on Friday, because it means a lot.
Yeah, it's good. So, which brings us nicely on to the reasons to be cheerful. And mine is, I'm going to chuck mine out first before you. I'm going to go straight in and do it, because mine is the street party in the street, right? I'm quite an insular person. I say hello to everyone. I'm very approachable, but
except on the football field, right?
Yeah, except on a football. I'm not very approachable. Actually, my wife tells me all the time, right, that I'm not approachable, right? And that I come across with this awe that I'm not approachable. I feel very approachable, and I'm a really nice guy, right? But I don't, you know, I'm not sort of made friends with, I've been here 5 years, and I've not really sort of interacted with much of the street apart from the guy over the road. So I'm looking forward to that. I think, you know, it will be a nice reflection of some of the positive things to come out of this that's brought the street together. You know, we go out and clap on the Thursday as well. So, you know, you're banging a tin pan with someone you've never banged a tin pan with before, and it's brought back a little bit of that community spirit. So that is my reason to be cheerful, and I do genuinely feel and believe that is something that will last. It won't be a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's true. I think you've definitely seen more connectivity. Like, on my street's the same. Like, there's a lot of, you know, hey, how you doing, chit chat, but there just feels a bit more togetherness. So no, I like that. My reason to be cheerful this week is the innocence of youth, right? So as I said earlier, my daughter turned 6 on Monday, and we were having a little joke with her to say, oh look, because of the lockdown, we couldn't get any presents, and we're just playing a little, having a bit of fun with her.
Just
We said, okay,
emotionally manipulating your children
exactly.
on her birthday.
As you do. I mean, you get bored during lockdown, so you've got to get your kicks somehow. So we said, oh, we've got one present for you, and she was like, she was just brilliant with it. She was like, that's cool. And did you get wrapping paper? No, we couldn't get wrapping paper, just, and she was like, yeah, that's okay. And then obviously, it probably sounds really cruel now, but it was just fun. It was a bit of fun. But, but I guess the thing I loved was how she was just like, yeah, no, that's fine. That's great. And really understanding, and just gave me a lot of hope for the future. And then obviously the surprise she had when she sort of rolled up to the room downstairs and saw her presents was amazing. But I think even coming into the day, she just really just took what was in her stride, and I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, they have an amazing capacity to adjust, don't they, children? Mm. Incredible, especially when their parents are emotionally abusing them on the birthday.
The day before.
Listen,
her birthday was brilliant.
I think that's a lovely way to end what's been a really good episode. Anything to add before we sign off? Oh, by the way, come and join the community at 115 Miles Pod, at 115 Miles Pod on Instagram, where we follow The Rock. I just want to put it out there. And Nike. And if you've got any, questions, then hit us with them. It'd be interesting to do. But other than that, I'm ready to sign out, Hass.
Yeah.
I'm leaving that in.
See you guys. See you next time.